I was curious on Monday night. Matt Humans and I were talking about all of the coaching firings that have unfolded so far in college football. And I was curious how those teams have fared immediately after the coach was fired. The old fired coach bump, right? Because we've seen a couple of teams, most notably UCLA and UAB, have some big time upsets. UCLA beating Penn State, as we all remember, as around a 24-point underdog. And then this past weekend, UAB stunning Memphis as a 23.5-point underdog. And a pretty neat story there with Chris Mortensen, the late, great Chris Mortensen's son, being the interim head coach at UAB. So far, we have had 7 in-season firings in the FBS ranks. This does not include Stanford, who relieved their coach prior to the start of the season, bringing in Frank Reich on an interim basis. So the in-season firings have been Virginia Tech, Oklahoma State, UCLA, Arkansas, Oregon State, Penn State, and UAB. Colorado State fired Jay Norvell over the weekend after they lost to Hawaii, and Florida got rid of Sunbelt Billy after they did get the win over Mississippi State, but with the bye week coming up and the cocktail party, they made the decision to fire Sunbelt Billy this past weekend. So Florida doesn't fit this exercise because they don't play this weekend, but Colorado State does. So when we look at how teams have fared so far, immediately after their coach got fired, let's go back to Virginia Tech. Virginia Tech, after 3 games, decided to make the move. Brent Pry, adios. They made the move there. Virginia Tech played FCS Wofford the week after they fired their head coach. They were a 35-point favorite. They won 38-6, so they did not cover. It is worth noting, the following week, as a 10-point underdog, they beat NC State, so won that game outright. So they did win and cover their first FBS opponent, but we're not going to shift the data too much. They didn't cover the first game. But then we get to Oklahoma State. Mike Gundy fired. Their next game on the road at Baylor. Pokes were 21-point underdogs. They lost, but 45-27. Got the cover. Since then, by the way, Oklahoma State has not covered a game. Oklahoma State 1-6 ATS on the year, and I believe 38-point underdogs this week against the Red Raiders of Texas Tech. Okay, UCLA. This has been the one that we have all pointed to. Since Deshaun Foster has been fired, UCLA went on the road to Northwestern, 6-point underdog. They covered that game. Since then, they beat Penn State as a 3+ touchdown underdog. They beat Michigan State as a touchdown plus underdog. And then they were favored this weekend against Maryland. And depending on what number you got, it was either a push or a fail to cover as they won by 3. So they're 3-1 straight up, 3-1 against the spread based off of the closing number, but covered immediately. How about Arkansas? Old neck brace Bobby Petrino. How have the Razorbacks fared since they fired Sam Pittman following the 56-13 loss to Notre Dame? October 11th, 10-point underdog to Tennessee, lost 34-31. That would be a cover. Arkansas, by the way, also backdoor cover du jour this weekend. I did not give that out on the podcast. That was a bet that I was very curious about. Ultimately didn't give it out, and they got a late touchdown as it felt like Bobby Petrino maybe playing towards the cover there. But Arkansas 2-0 ATS since firing Sam Pittman. Oregon State, they were winless. They fire Trent Bray, and they were a 21.5-point favorite against Lafayette, the Leopards from the Patriot League. Shout out to the Lehigh Valley. The Lafayette Leopards went out to Corvallis, and they were winning at halftime, Lafayette was. Oregon State did outscore Lafayette 35-0 in the second half. That would be a cover, 45-13. 2 other games. Penn State, 3-point underdog at Iowa. They lost the game 25-24, but got the cover. And then UAB, as mentioned, 23.5-point underdogs to Memphis, won the game outright 31-24. So 6-1 against the spread for teams who have fired their head coach. Now, I tried to look up historical precedent. I was texting with a buddy, is this a blip? Maybe it is, but I thought it was worth noting because it feels like we're going to get more of these firings as the year goes on. We have Colorado State playing Wyoming this weekend. We have Florida playing Georgia next weekend. Could we see an in-season firing with a team like Wisconsin? Certainly is possible with them on the road as a near 5-touchdown underdog this week against Oregon. So I'll just say this real quickly regarding Colorado State and Wyoming. This is not a game in which I am blindly just betting on the fired coach bump. Is it part of the handicap? A little bit. But I also think, too, there is a belief, and I think Brad Powers is the one who brought this up a year or two ago on this podcast or maybe on VSiN Primetime. Teams who lose to FCS teams early on in the year are looked to be on discount as the season goes on because the perception is, well, this team sucks. They lost to an FCS opponent, and you might get, air quotes, value on that particular team. I think the same is true regarding teams with fired coaches. And you got to realize this. Colorado State and Wyoming, it's a big-time rivalry. It's the border war, and this has been going on for 100-plus years. And word on the street, they're not trying to cancel this rivalry, USC Notre Dame. But I am actually curious about when Colorado State goes to the Pac-12. I don't know. Hopefully they don't cancel this rivalry because it is a great one. And I think you're going to get the best from Colorado State in this game. And I don't think Wyoming should be laying 5.5 really against anybody in the FBS. So I did bet Colorado State. It is not blindly on the fired coach bump, but we'll see if the trend does continue. 6-1 so far this year. The game after the head coach was fired, they have covered. So we will see if that trend continues. 6 straight covers as well. So I will be on the Colorado State Rams. Hold your nose. Take the 5.5 in that spot against Wyoming in the border war.